Result, consumers had to buy above market or had to pay above market prices for goods and services. It's got 4 more here, then we're done. Roosevelt broke up the strongest banks. Remember, this is on the heels of establishing all those cartel codes where you can protect monolithic cartels. Well, I guess if you were in the wrong group, you weren't protected. In fact, his actions affected those that diversified with both commercial and investment banking. Didn't let him do that. His federal deposit insurance did not stop bank failures. That insurance, though, did transfer the cost to the taxpayers, as it wasn't stopping bank failures. About 90% of banks' failures occurred due to unit banking laws that prevented small banks from diversifying through branches or finding niches, right, where they could do better, where they really could find a gap or a slot where they could serve their customers better than anyone else. There's a Great Depression era bank run. Result, another New Deal program that increased central government control without solving the problem it addressed. I think that cartoon's a rerun, sorry about that. Okay, 8th, New Deal securities laws hampered employers from raising capital and did not aid investors. Raising desperately needed capital grew even more difficult for business owners than it had been before. New Deal securities laws generated costly regulations for issuing stocks, once again when they were most needed to be issued. The rate of return from new stock issues failed to improve even after the New Deal era Securities and Exchange Commission was established. Result? Once again, increased central government control reduced rather than enhanced liberty and the quality of life. And then the Tennessee Valley Authority became a drag on the economy. Isn't that one of the kind of the poster children for the New Deal? Well, gosh, these folks would have never gotten anything, electricity or anything, if it hadn't been for good old Uncle Sam, because after all, the private sector couldn't do it, right? This famed program is often cited as a classic example of government's ability to outperform the private sector. Yet, 98%, again, the part PBS didn't tell you, 98% of Americans did not live in the Tennessee Valley, and they were taxed to pay for the TVA. Those Americans' tax money was used for the TVA power, which became a power-generating monopoly. How'd you like to be trying to set up electricity or provide power to people in that area when you were up against this bankroll government monolith? If that's not fascism, I don't know what is. Isn't that in fascism when the government and big business is in cahoots and they have guns to back them up if necessary? That my understanding, that's fascism. The TVA was exempted from federal and state taxes and regulations. That's where it covered Tennessee River, basically. Result: non-TVA southern states such as North Carolina and Georgia, those that were not affected or supposedly helped by it, well, they grew faster than TVA states because more of their farmers, realizing they just couldn't do it anymore, well, they moved on into higher paying manufacturing and service jobs more quickly. I assure you, the folks in the Tennessee Valley that were hanging on in agriculture and other industries that just couldn't pay a living wage anymore, I assure you they eventually were out of those industries as well. But the people in surrounding states got out of them quicker and got a head start. Historian Clarence B. Carson, and I commend to you his Basic History of the United States, a 6-volume traditionalist, constitutionalist history of the U.S. It doesn't have all the fancy whistles and bells. It's not cosmetically beautiful, but all it has is great history by a wise historian. And he summed it up, the TVA, as, quote, a socialist experiment designed to prove the superiority of the government ownership and distribution of electricity. And the TVA, Carson continues, became the pet project of all those who believe so strongly in the beneficence of government involvement in the economy. And I think I forgot I had a picture here as a classic showing one of the many families in their little shotgun shack who lost even that because, well, sorry folks, everybody out in this county, you're going to have to move because of the new dam or the new canal or whatever. So an untold number of those people in the Tennessee Valley had to move out because they were flooded over. 10th and last, Roosevelt disrupted companies employing millions. In 1938, he authorized an unprecedented barrage of antitrust lawsuits against about 150 employers and industries. And again, I assume those were not in the cartels that were supported by the New Deal administration, even as his administration did support those others comprised of other companies. Result? Continued delay of national economic recovery that free market forces could have propelled. And by the way, only a couple of years into the New Deal, far from the entire nation bowing down and worshiping at the altar of Roosevelt and seeking only to touch the hem of his garment to be blessed, far from that, much popular opinion began to question and even eventually to ridicule the New Deal and the entire philosophy behind it. For instance, famed humorist and in 1934 the world's most popular movie star, Will Rogers. He had originally supported FDR and had decried the suffering of Americans as the Depression deepened. But by the time of his death in an airplane crash in Alaska with Wiley Post in 1935, far from the end of the New Deal, Rogers was already questioning the dramatic shift of power toward the federal government. And in his inimitable way, he said, well, quote, Will Rogers here, well, the old year will be passing out in a few hours, and I don't know personally a thing I can do about it. I guess there will be a lot of people who will take it up with the government as they look to them to do everything else. Nearly a half a decade later after that statement, in the spring of 1939, the American Institute of Public Opinion asked, quote, do you think the attitude of the Roosevelt administration toward business is delaying business recovery? Delaying? Is it still being delayed? When did the New Deal start, people? Yeah, we're talking 1939 now, the end of the decade. Roosevelt got in office in January of 33. Remember that fateful 100 days, first 100 days where the cascade of these acts, the alphabet soup acts, began to come off the assembly line. And here we are 6.5 years later, and they're asking, is his administration delaying business recovery? Well, the American public responded yes, by a margin of more than 2-1. That's the totality of the American public. Democrats, Republicans, everyone. Here's a quote for you. See if you can guess who said it. We have tried spending money. We're spending more than we've ever spent before, and it does not work. Talking about government spending money, spending taxpayer money. We've never made good on our promises. I say after 8 years of this administration, we have just as much unemployment as when we started, and enormous debt to boot. Yeah, so which arch-conservative Republican issued that stinging declaration? Because again, I think they left that one off PBS, didn't they? Anybody have any guesses?
Vandenberg.
Who's that?
Vandenberg.
Vandenberg, that's a good guess. Who'd you say back there?
Harry Byrd.
Byrd?
Dewey.
Pardon me?
Thomas Dewey.
Thomas Dewey. These are good guesses.
Taft.
Taft?
Give us a hint.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the answer. Actually, it was Henry Morgenthau, Roosevelt's own Secretary of the Treasury. How about that? Unless you think, well, this is one of those guys that went off the reservation and turned against his mentor or whatever. Not at all. Morgenthau was with Roosevelt all the way through World War II, till Roosevelt died. All right, in conclusion, the New Deal was well-intentioned, but it did not end the Great Depression. That what I just said. It did not end the Great Depression, right? Okay. Nor did, conservatives listen, World War II, during which the entire state, it should say nation, suffered mass rationing. I remember my mom telling me about, she was late teens during the war, World War II, and she remembered how they had coupons. Probably some of y'all remember this. I don't know in your locality what it was, but in hers it was 5 gallons of gas a week, right? No new tires, no new cars, no new homes after 1942.